Hey guys, Chadata here. I wanted to spend some time talking about RuneScape and one of the major problems it's been having lately of getting new players into the game. Now if you don't know who I am, you've never heard of me before, I'm pretty much just an amateur game developer. I run some TF2 servers as a hobby in my free time, and I spend time working with my own community to balance the custom game modes I run. But anyways, I have this kind of question for the game developers over at Jagex, and that question is, why should I play RuneScape 3 over other MMORPGs out there with ability-based combat? Imagine the perspective of someone who's never played RuneScape before, but they're a potential new player, and they're looking at videos of RuneScape gameplay versus videos of gameplay from newer MMOs that have come out in the past few years, like Blade and Soul or Black Desert Online. What is it about RuneScape 3 that's gonna get these people to try out that game instead of any of the other options out there? I can understand the appeal of the EOC combat system for the RuneScape 3 half of the player base. But for gamers who've never played RuneScape before, what's supposed to make them decide to try RuneScape 3 instead of all the other MMOs with ability-based combat? Here's a short clip from the YouTuber Fever that showcases Black Desert Online's combat system.
The game does have a traditional hotbar for abilities, but one of the shining points of this game is that it shouldn't see much use. There are some consumables and some long cooldown type abilities that might sit there, but the game is set up like a fighting game, and instead of having this long list of abilities, it really feels like you have a moveset straight out of a game like Tekken. So for example, I'm playing a sorcerer, and I have 4 basic moves. I have left click for my claw attack, I have right click for this weak projectile, E is this spinning uppercut, and F is a kick. Now, scattered throughout a pretty extensive skill tree, you see a whole bunch of different abilities and unlocked moves that you can activate, not with binding it to a new key, but augmenting the ability press, those 4 keys, with movement. So the same way that holding crouch and high punch in like Mortal Kombat will give you an uppercut, in Black Desert, holding forward and left click gives you a lunging claw attack. And the combinations here are really intuitive, and most of the time the direction you press in combination will dictate the type of movement attached to that type of attack.
Now I've never played Black Desert Online before, but based off of this video, the combat system in this game looks like it has something really interesting going for it. And for comparison's sake, here's a clip of Blade and Soul's combat in the PvP arena.
Now I'm sneaking around, I'm trying to get a stun. Looks like she evaded it, not quite sure what happened there. Then she's going to knock me down, but I'm going to get back into stealth with a nice decoy. And here we go, going in for an attack, but she's going to roll back once again. She's playing a pretty good game, but I'm not too worried about it. Going to land a straw doll, and here we go, getting a big combination there, taking down about, what was that, 40-50% of her health from just one attack. That was very, very devastating. Going to throw out a landmine, but I don't think...
So I actually played Blade and Soul during its English release, and my impression was that it throws the EOC combat system out of the water. It's very skill-based, and the controls feel very natural, sort of like what Fever described with the controls for Black Desert Online. It really gave me a sense of how outdated RuneScape 3's combat looks when you're browsing the MMOs that are out there in the market today. I mean, being a person who's played both RuneScape and Blade and Soul, I actually know what RuneScape does better than Blade and Soul, and I know what Blade and Soul's major turnoffs are as a game. But none of that matters, because that's all stuff that you only find out after you've played the game for a while. What about when you're just trying to figure out what game to get into in the first place? I mean, overall, RuneScape has much better game design in terms of storytelling, the vast amount of available content, quest design, social interaction, bot and gold farmer banning, and overall stuff to do and the vast amount of stuff to explore. Comparatively, Blade and Soul only has one very long, linear quest line with a rather generic story to go with it and subpar localization from the Japanese version of the game. every quest in Blade and Soul involves just killing 10 enemies and then talking to an NPC, or gathering 10 items and then talking to an NPC, and you do this for like hundreds of quests in a row, and it just gets very repetitive, doing the same thing again and again. And back when I played RuneScape 5 years ago, it managed to avoid this problem of repetitiveness that seemed very draining. You know, RuneScape did have its own kinds of repetitiveness, but there was always a sort of cycle of different things you could do. You know, you could go questing, you could do PVM, you could do PvP, you could do mini quests, you could do mini games. There's a good wealth of content to do, and even in the questing alone, the quests are always unique and have all sorts of different things going on with them. It's not just this copy and paste of go kill 10 monsters. You have to talk to NPCs around the world and move the story forward dynamically. But like I said before, this means nothing to potential new players who haven't played the game at all yet. Between the tutorials for Blade and Soul and RuneScape 3, I'd imagine that if a new player played them back to back, the game they'd be interested in is Blade and Soul. Back when the EOC first came out, one of the justifications that popped up for it was the idea that if there are other successful games out there doing things that RuneScape is not, it logically follows that RuneScape ought to do the same thing. And this seems like a good idea when you put it this way. And to some extent, thinking this way does work. It will get you somewhere. But there's another way you could think about it that gets you a little bit further. Instead of looking at other games' systems and thinking about how we're not doing that and we should go try doing that for ourselves, Jagex should be asking themselves, what can we do with this system that no one else is doing? What can we do to create a gaming experience that's unique and better than every other game out there that's doing the same thing? This is sort of the mindset I've picked up from doing my little amateur game development hobby for my Team Fortress 2 servers and balancing a custom game mode for players that I interact with every day and coming up with new and interesting things for them to do. It's the idea of thinking about how things could be, not how things are, and innovating new things. My TF2 server, compared to other TF2 servers running the same mods, is very successful because I have many things that other TF2 servers are not doing. And I do many things that other TF2 servers are doing, but I do them better. I have a friend who runs a Slender Fortress server that's more successful than any of the other Slender Fortress servers because they do more things than what the basic Slender Fortress server does. We all work off the same basic game of Team Fortress 2, but it's the things that we do better than other games that make people prefer our servers instead. You know, in the same way, Blade and Soul and Black Desert Online are kind of competing for who has the most interesting and innovative combat system between those two games. And of course, RuneScape being as old as it is and having such a basic combat system in comparison doesn't even come into question when there's no videos about the Blade and Soul combat system versus the RuneScape EOC combat system. Of course, despite what I'm saying now, whenever I get the chance to recommend an MMO to a friend, I steer them the hell away from Blade and Soul because of all the flaws it has. And I usually recommend them to old school RuneScape instead because that's what I think has something unique and special going for it. Now, maybe some of you aren't convinced that RuneScape is having trouble getting new players. Well, the data's all there. People have trackers for the player count. So if we look back in early 2013, we see the EOC spiking at around 70k, 62k, If you look at the chart down here, across the course of 2013 to the end of 2014, it kind of dips down until it jumps back up in January of 2015, or rather around February and March of 2015 it jumps back up, and then it kind of averages out from then till now. If you click at any point in the range from April of 2015 to today in 2017, the peak for the player count here is 50k, 50k again, click in another spot, 40, 45, 46k. A little bit further on, we have a 70k peak here. 40k, starting to go down a little bit. 36k. At the very end, we see a little jump again. We're back up to 65k peaks here, 63. Then goes down again to 36k. 40k peak around there, but overall it's just been pretty much averaging between 40,000 to 60,000 players for the past 2 years, and even further back. It's doing better than it was 3 years ago, 3 to 4 years ago, but overall the whole list is kind of averaging out. You know, it's not like we're growing or anything. But at least the game's not dead. We have a stable player base, but it's just kind of stagnant. It's not growing, but the game's not dying by any means. You know, comparatively, if you look at Team Fortress 2, they peak at 117k back in 2012. Yeah, and then they kind of average out to around an 80k player base all the way out to this day, which is actually less than the total that RuneScape has. But both of these communities, even if they're not exactly growing a lot, they're fairly stable communities. You're not going to see either of these games die anytime soon, but they're not growing either. Of course, there's many other factors to this kind of thing. You know, in general, if you look at the player counts or popularity of any MMO out there, the popularity of MMOs in general has dropped over time. But either way, this is just something that I noticed and wanted to get off my mind. You know the question, what will bring new players to RuneScape 3 instead of other MMOs? This is a pretty new thing for me, being my first sort of lengthy dialogue video. And I hope to improve over time, because I know I talk very slow, at least for most of this video. I thank you for spending the time to listen to what I have to say, and I hope to see you again on my next video.